Okay, so they're not like the same guy, and their music is completely different, but I do think they're similar in two sort of important ways. And the first is that they explore the voice in an interesting way, which I'll get into. And the second is that I feel like their music careers have shown a similar path, like that's focused on artistic integrity, and then like the exploring the voice kind of plays into that. So the first bit is their first albums. So for Tom Waits, this is Closing Time, and I think that's 1973. And he just sings in one voice, and the most experimental song on this is Ice Cream Man. And for someone who tends to get associated with like gruffness in general, this is a very nice song, nice sounding voice, and it tends to be all this romantic kind of barfly voice that the whole first album is done. And even Ice Cream Man is kind of like barfly. So I'll play a little bit of Ice Cream Man so you can hear that.
Meet me out for coffee, where we'll talk about it all.
So that's actually Martha, but so you can tell it's just like a nice voice. He kind of sounds like he's sitting at this piano in a bar, maybe a little bit dingy, but he's clearly like gifted. And then Ice Cream Man, which I said is the most experimental and maybe the weirdest one, but it's really not that strange of a song. So it's kind of fun, but it's not like what you would associate later with Waits, like God's Away on Business, where he's sort of barking and screaming and making you uncomfortable as a listener. And so this whole first album is nice, and it shows he has a lot of pop sensibilities, a lot of like barroom ballads, let's call them. And it's nice. It's like goes from Old 55, which is the morning, and then Closing Time, which is the night. So it's cool as a concept. And similar to this idea of it as a concept, it's just one guy singing, and that's, call it Barfly Tom Waits, I guess. And then for Carti, for the self-titled album, he's doing a lot of stuff where he's like matching production with voice, and this tends to be done with like ad-libs, the tone he's using in the mood. Like on Magnolia, it's a little bit bouncy, and he matches that bounce. And then it's like a lot of like infectious stuff that gets in your head, whether it be the ad-libs or the actual melodies themselves. But he just does a really good job of exploring the voice's potential and like where it can fit into a song. And he like grabs up extra space, and he'll like whistle or make whatever ad-lib noise, not really whistle, to like find that space and claim that space for him, which I think also is why features tend to be not so good. Like actual, like if you bring in, I don't know, what's that one guy's name I hate? Let's not make fun of anybody. Let's just say like you bring in a typical rapper who doesn't do this like seeking out space with ad-libs and tone of voice. They tend to like flop on a song compared to like, I guess like Poke It Out is a good example where Nicki Minaj is a great rapper, and when she does like the little ad-libby stuff at the beginning, it feels cool in the song, but then when she just like raps over the beat, it doesn't feel as cool as what like Carti's doing with the whole Poke It Out bit in the beginning. But all this to say, on the first album, Carti tends to stick to like one voice, and it's a voice that has been copied a ton, but he's doing like the front voice tends to be like just the Playboi Carti voice, which I'll play a little bit of.
In New York, I merely rock, hiding in my socks, running from a up, and I shoot at up.
So yeah, it's just that one Playboi Carti voice is the thing he's singing with the whole time, or rapping with, or whatever. And it's similar to that Waits is just doing like the beautiful barfly voice. So for Waits, as his career goes on and across like these 5 albums, specifically the 4 last ones, he begins to experiment with like the voice's potential to create a character. And so on songs like Step Right Up, Pastries in a G-String, Small Change, Romeo's Bleeding, $29, Cypher Sore Eyes, he's like playing around with this idea that the voice, he leaves the barfly voice behind for the most part, and he's playing around with this idea that you can create characters. Like $29 is about like the people in the operating room with this woman who had $29 in her purse. It might be the coroner's office. It's just this idea of creating an atmosphere and character through voice, and he does that on all the songs I just mentioned. But the barfly is never fully gone, and I think that's because it was a way the label knew that they could get hits and make money. And so you have songs like Jersey Girl or Somewhere, or Four Sheets in Copenhagen, which are all really nice like ballad songs that Tom Waits sings, and they tend to be the popular songs on the album in general. And then when we get to the 6th album, which is Heart Attack and Vine, you have this 3-song run at the end, which is On the Nickel, and then you have Mr. Seagull, and then you have Ruby's Arms, which are 3 distinct characters, all created, in my opinion, with like just the voice and Tom Waits is singing. And I think On the Nickel is the best because it's like this idea, On the Nickel meaning, what's it called? something Row. It's 5th Avenue in Los Angeles. I'll pause and interrupt myself in post here. But it's this idea that it's like a homeless character and like singing from their perspective. And then Mr. Siegel's like this hoard out guy in Mexico. And then Ruby's Arms is like a heartbroken soldier that's going out to war. And the way Tom Waits sings all these characters brings them to life and like makes you feel stuff. And it's just incredible. And the reason I bring up like the 3-song run at the end is because then on his next album, oh wait, actually I think I have On the Nickel.
So climb up through that buttonhole, fall right up the stairs. I'll show you where.
Yeah, okay, so On the Nickel it's cool because he like slips into that whispery voice and then goes back to the powerful voice. And you can just tell in this 3-song run that he's interested in the voice's potential as an instrument and a way to create character. And then he leaves Asylum, which I feel like maybe was limiting or encouraging him, maybe not limiting, but encouraging him to like make more ballady songs that they knew would make money. And he goes to Island Records, and this first Island record is Swordfish Trombone. And even just like looking at the album cover, you can tell it's a different Tom Waits, because the first 6 album covers are like kind of like the sexy barfly songwriter Tom Waits that's like, you know, smoking a cigarette and is really good at playing the piano and is who you would dream of running into at like an open mic night bar thing in the Midwest or something. And then you get the Swordfish Trombone album cover, which shows Tom Waits' interest in like different aspects of life and sort of like freaky aspects of humanity. And he just goes apeshit, like creating characters on this album. There's like one song that's kind of ballady, which is Jonesburg, Illinois. But even then, if it's like the barroom ballad, it's like a hammered guy singing out of tune. And I think it's a love song for Kathleen Brennan, his wife, who like after this album, I believe, maybe it was a couple before, but I think it's Swordfish Trombone. They went on to like be co-collaborators and writers and like creating these characters together, even though Waits is the one singing. And yeah, across this album, he screams, he barks, he rasps, he whispers, he roars, he mumbles like all these characters into existence. Like Underground is insane, Shore Leave is creepy, and Dave the Butcher is an instrumental, and 16 Shells from 30-06 is just like intense, and it screams at you and makes you feel stuff and makes you feel uncomfortable and hyped up. Yeah, and this would go on to like guide the way for the rest of his career, where he creates a bunch of characters across all his albums, and they could be like cynical, they could be like God's Away on Business, or The Ocean Doesn't Want Me Today, or they could be like optimistic, like Jesus Gonna Be Here, or, you know, something like about like a Job-ish song of tending to work, like Get Behind the Mule. So yeah, I think it's very cool, and you can kind of tell with Heart Attack and Vine that he was so ready to explore the voice's potential to create character. And then once he gets to Asylum, that's like all he does and he continues to do. And it's why he's like persisted as such a great artist, in my opinion. Like, I mean, you can have different opinions. And then you get to Carti. We go back to Carti. And so you have Die Lit, and it's mostly the same fronting voice that was on the self-titled. There's some more interesting, like, you know, using the voice as an instrument and finding space in the ad-lib. And this is kind of where I feel like I found that his collaborations, like who he raps with on the songs, he tends to just outshine them because of his ad-libs and like the way he matches the mood of the production. R.I.P. is like the one song that hints at what's coming next. And so what came next was Whole Lotta Red. And for me, this is like cements Carti's interest in like the voice to create atmosphere and character. So it's not really through story, but through sounds, like what he's rapping about or talking about. He's not creating the character, but the sounds he's making, both like with the fronting vocals and the ad-libs, like make the listener feel whatever it is. So it's like hyped up or scared, sometimes claustrophobic, sometimes like invincible, all these things. Listening to this album, you run the gamut of emotions, and he's not really saying much. Like I said, it's mostly him playing around with like the voice's potential to make the listener feel something. And so like on Rockstar Made, he lets us know that it's not the first 2 albums. So like the first track starts out with
never too much, never too much, never too much, never too much, never too much.
You can just tell like this is not going to be the first 2 albums. The Carti voice that you're familiar with from like Dial It and the self-titled is not there. It's like weird and raspy, and the production's intense, and so you just know after listening to Rockstar May, this is not the same album. And then a good example of like the way a song can make you feel something is Claustrophobia and Rage on Stop Breathing, which is my favorite song.
Take my shirt off and now the whole stop breathe. Take my shirt off and now the whole stop breathe. Take my shirt off and now the whole stop breathe. Take my shirt off and now the whole stop breathe. Breathe, breathe, bitch stop breathe, breathe, breathe.
Yeah, so like that song like makes you feel hyped up, but it also makes you feel a little bit claustrophobic, or at least it makes me feel that way. And then the last bit is like him trying out 10 voices on Jump Out the House that I'll talk about, but it's like this weird high-pitched ad-lib that kind of sounds like Munchkins, like the main voice is stomping on Munchkins.
Jump out the house, 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 jump out.
And then the question after Whole Lotta Red is like, will Playboi Carti continue to explore the potential of the human voice? And then we had to wait 5 years, but there were like rumblings about what music would be, which is the album. And yeah, he's like super interested in. So the first one, Pop Out, feels like a Whole Lotta Red song.
I can't come to your party, I might come just to hurt you.
So like he's obviously very interested in finalizing the exploration of that Whole Lotta Red thing, and he starts the album with this to like tease listeners into maybe thinking, oh, I'm gonna do another Whole Lotta Red album that's like very hypey, very trappy. But then you have songs like Wheezy, which I love, which is completely different, and he's like exploring what his voice can do and like how he can create atmosphere and mood.
2-tone APs, looking like Weezy. Have it inside in Cleveland, shout out bleeding. I told her I'm big like Bieber, she ain't believe me. A whole lot of motherfucking drugs.
Yeah, and so then, I mean, which is completely different from Pop Out and like every other song on the album, and it's so cool. And at first, like, you don't like it, but then you just end up loving it and like singing it to yourself. And then the same thing with like Mojo Jojo. Kendrick does a great job of like matching the idea of ad-libs, creating atmosphere, and like having fun with being on a song with somebody else. And I don't know, it's just so cool. And so in conclusion, Tom Waits and Playboi Carti are a lot alike in that they explore the voice and they're mostly pursuing their own artistic pursuits. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't a great way to summarize it, but I don't know if I have a better way of doing it. Yeah, they're both really good. All right, peace.
Back in high school, I was wearing polo. Had a white bitch like Jules, but she had moto. But she had what?